Hello and welcome back to Unleash Your Inner Athlete, and I'm here with Dr. Cuan Wayne, and he is a fantastic family chiropractor, also the author of this amazing book, as I said, Why Movement is Medicine, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But now I know your main thing is movement, isn't it, Dr. Wayne? Really important, and today we're going to also be getting into some of the strategies that you implement, why it's so important, movement is so important, not only just for recovery from pain, but also the prevention of pain as well, and sort of common mistakes people can be making. And I know this is a really important subject, and that people really need to look into this further, because actually, believe it or not, the statistics are showing that 28 million people in the UK alone are suffering with chronic pain. And I did a little bit of research recently in the WHO, I think it was back in 2019, they did what was it called, the global burden of disease, and in that analysis they discovered that 1.71 million people globally are suffering with musculoskeletal problems, and that goes back pain, neck pain, injuries like fractures, osteoarthritis, that kind of thing. But actually, it was in the higher income countries that had the highest prevalence of this. It was about, I think, 441 million people. So this is actually really important why this is happening now, particularly in those wealthier countries. So you want to get into some of those strategies, but it's not just about the external, recovery and prevention. It's also how you create your internal environment as well. And we are going to get into your book, because I know that it's full of really important detailed information. You've got like 19 benefits, I think there's 18 concepts in there. I want to talk a little bit about as well your 7 strategies, and also what you call your NRE, your neural re-education, which is going to be really key. And also your own little story about how you managed, goodness knows how, to run a marathon in 8 weeks and train for it. So before we get into all of that, though, just tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into the field that you're in, and just give our listeners a little bit more of your personal history.
Yeah, brilliant, Julia. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a real honor for me. Wow. So thank you for the massive introduction. There's a lot to cover. Let's hopefully we can get through all of it. If not, we'll have to come back for a second round.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I'll probably say one of the key moments in my life was when I was 17. I went to Johns Hopkins University for a summer program. And one of the lecturers there was speaking about gunshot wounds. So speaking about people who arrive at a hospital DOA, dead on arrival. Right. And his message was basically the only way to prevent a dead on arrival patient is to prevent the gunshots in the first place. Mm-hmm. And that obviously sounds so obviously, but that really hit home to me about how are we going to prevent things in the future? And then, cut a long story short, I applied for medicine and chiropractic, and I got into both. And at the time, my brother was already third year medicine. And it was just kind of a toss up that I want to go down medical route or the chiropractic route. And I felt like my strengths were definitely working with people, and probably more the preventative motivational side of patient interactions. Yeah. So that's kind of got me down the chiropractic route. The chiropractic course in South Africa is 6 years. You finish with a master's. So I did that from 2008 till 2013. And then at the end of 2013, I started my own practice. I joined a practice as an associate. And at the same time, I launched the brand behind me, MoveMed, which has been going since then. And that's just my educational platform to teach people why movement is medicine. So that's a bit of an introduction. I've been really fortunate, and I worked with the England indoor cricket team. That was a cool sporting highlight as a sports chiropractor. That was pretty cool. And then, I've lectured a bit, and now I find myself just really enjoying private practice, and just doing this journey with patients, just creating a good doctor-patient relationship, putting the sort of power back into a patient's hands, where I think historically medical care has been come see me forever because you're broken. Whereas we try and promote, let's get you moving and teach you how to move yourself.
Well, I think that's really important, actually, because like you said, so many people get stuck in this cycle. If something's wrong, they've just got to do endless physio or osteopath or chiropractor or doctor visits, and they never seem to be able to get out of this cycle of pain. And as we can see, clearly there's an awful lot of people in this cycle of, pain, trauma, inflammation, degeneration, and it just goes on and on and on, and there's nothing that seems to sort of come in and stop that. And I'm just wondering with you, sort of getting into what you're doing and why movement is so important. I mean, I know I knew sort of elements of this within my own practice, my own treatments, and my own way I train clients, mind-body connection and all that. But in terms of what you're doing, it is kind of, it's not entirely new, but what you're doing is, and this neural re-education that you use as well. Explain a little bit about, you know, how that, because you use that as well, as I said in your book about, and you show your whole training method using this NRE to get you in 8 weeks to be able to run a marathon. So explain a little bit to us, a little bit about why you do that, why that's important, and the reasons behind it.
Yeah, very good questions. So neural reeducation, or the neural reeducation protocol, is an educational tool. Because I think empowering patients needs to be done with education. Once a patient understands what or why they are doing something, the why, it's very important. Once they understand why they're doing something, the job is done. Like they will self-motivate themselves once we've incepted a thought in their brain as to why they are doing it and why it's good for them. So neural reeducation is just a like framework of like a educational tool, and it consists of 3 things. So it's the 3 moves. They're actually behind me over there on the wall. The 3 moves are remove, then remove, and then move. So when we see a patient, the first thing we do is we try and remove a few things. So we try and remove the things that are causing the injury in the first place. I've recently done a talk, so I know what page it's on. So in my book on page 8, we speak about in order to be healthy, you have to be willing to give up the things that made you ill in the first place. So removing the things that made you ill. So broadly, we can touch on these later if you want, but remove the stresses that are causing injury and pain, and remove things that are causing excess inflammation. Excess is the key word. Obviously, inflammation is essential for life, but excess inflammation is causing a lot of extra symptoms that patients don't need. So once we remove the stresses and the excess inflammation, then we go to phase 2, which is remove the body. And that is the physical removing. So it's the assisted removing, or the assisted relearning of pain-free movement. That's probably the core definition of neural reeducation. And yes, like you can find this, you could find someone on Instagram who's doing online coaching. You could find a chiropractor, physiotherapist, osteopath, a life coach like yourself. There's numerous ways of doing this, but once you find someone who you trust and who can help you move physically, we obviously want to get the body physically moving better.
I mean, what do you what do you think the reason is people are becoming, their level of movement is decreasing, particularly as we're getting older? Because naturally, when you're getting older, you degenerate anyway. There's natural decline. But what is it that you feel people are coming to you for? You're taking them through this process. What is the reason that they're not moving? They're not able to get the results elsewhere that they get with you?
Yes, I'll answer that question now. So the third step of the neural reeducation is moving forward, and that's the accountability that we spoke about earlier. Why do a lot of people come and see me? Most people will see a physical therapist, chiropractor, osteopath, etc., because they're in pain. So pain or the sensation of like someone feeling pain normally brings them through our front door. And there are numerous factors of why people get pain. A lot of our patients are desk bound. So people who work behind screens, that's a major factor. But I'd probably say if that's a third of patients, then I'd say probably a third is people who are doing repetitive strain injuries. That's people who drive a lot, or who do manual work, but it's of a repetitive nature. And then a third of people, there's a whole side of pain that is neuroplastic or psychogenic, however you want to think of it. Sometimes people have developed a movement pattern of pain to protect them, and that's why they come in. They're experiencing pain, but they shouldn't even be experiencing pain. And those types of patients are great to educate that pain and dysfunction are not directly linked. We can have patients with severe pain for no physiological reason, and we can have patients with no pain and they should be experiencing like a ton. So we again, that's an educational topic. Like once a patient knows, okay, cool, it's actually safe to move, we need to get them moving, because movement is like one of the big 5 pillars of longevity. So if someone is scared to move because of their pain, we need to get them moving.
So why do you think as well that if I think about sort of, again, older, because I mean, I've suffered chronic pain myself, particularly lower back, which is a common one for most people, like you say, sedentary lifestyle, sitting at the desk, but even for those who are quite active. What's the difference between those who manage to get through the pain, keep being active and having a healthy life and an active life, as opposed to those who may be a similar age, similar sort of background, that for some reason are really, really struggling? Is it just about, lifestyle, or is there more to it? Because you were saying that sometimes, and it, the studies have shown as well, the WHO, I think it's about 4 to 20% of people that have chronic pain issue is uncoupled from like a specific trauma, and they found out, about the emotional and psychological aspects of that. So it's, again, what would you say, does that play a part in, someone's inability to move, someone's pain prevalence?
Yeah, I think you touched on it there. It's just a multifaceted issue. So I grew up in South Africa, where, the weather is amazing. Naturally, we did a lot outdoors. So I was a natural mover. My wife, on the other hand, she's British. When I met her, she wasn't doing any exercise. Like she just didn't ever understand why people exercised. Like she understood that people exercise because of doing sport or to look good. She never thought of exercise as being a part of longevity and health. So I think especially in places like the UK, we've just been stuck in a generation now where, like the education about movement and exercise has potentially been lacking a bit in certain circles. And then 5 years go by, 10 years go by, and like next thing you have patients who have, for instance, their whole adult life or childhood never exercised. So yes, it's such a multifaceted issue. That's why we just want to keep the education going of getting people moving and moving safely.
Yeah, I think education is so important. Teaching people, getting them to understand, because as you pointed out there about sort of a lot of people these days are into the physical aspect, how they look, as opposed to what's going on with them internally as well, and how that can create inflammation in the body, which then has an effect on the other organs and the way your body behaves and responds to stress, and your, what's going on in your world, and how that then manifests within the body itself. And obviously, if you're struggling with movement, if you have structural imbalances, that's increasing not just your pain, but the inflammation. And as we know, inflammation is there for a reason, sort of early on, to help that healing process start. But once it's there for an extended period of time, it can then become quite damaging to the body.
Yeah, that's very true. So something that I was speaking to a patient with this morning is that often I personally would rather treat a patient for an overuse injury as opposed to an underuse injury. So if someone's come to see me because they've been exercising, what a treat, let's get the mechanics right and they should be fine normally. But a lot of patients come in because of too much inactivity. So we're treating muscles that just aren't used to movement, muscles that aren't able to stretch, muscles that haven't got the best blood supply. So sometimes we're really starting from the ground roots of just getting a patient moving, like as a point of from not moving to moving. The upside of seeing patients like that is that when you aren't exercising, often you'll see such great clinical outcomes very quickly. So patients will be a lot better really quick, but then they sometimes stagnate in a way. So the rate of their improvement slows down slightly. And that's where the education comes in, when the rate of improvement slows down, that's when we need to educate onto why or how to motivate to maintain it going forward. But yes, we can speak about some of the inflammation or the excess inflammatory causes later if you'd like. But yeah, I think that's why podcasts like yours is great. Just really getting good education out there about why people should be moving.
Well, I think so, because as we get older, like I say, we become less social. We do a little bit less. Maybe our responsibilities change. Maybe even if you're successful in business or whatever it may be, or obviously a lot of older athletes who've gone through that process of professional sport, they're carrying with them a lot of previous trauma that is obviously then going to be impacted as they get older with that natural degeneration. And the studies have suggested that actually athletes who come out of professional sport and continue training long have a better aging experience. So there's lots of evidence to show that being healthy, being movement, using maybe in some cases, if you like sport, getting into that sport, but it's also the measures you take if that's the step you want to take for preventing pain, even though you're starting with all the good reasons, it's taking you through those stages to make sure you don't overdo it too early on and then actually end up holding yourself back. You want to keep progressing. And obviously being strong, being healthy, keeping the muscles in good condition, being able to reduce all that inflammation and, be active actually gives you a better aging experience, a better quality of life. So with that in mind, what is your process around, helping someone go through from start to beginning? Because it's also kind of a psychological thing, I think, as well. It's getting someone into the mindset, particularly if they've been in pain for an extended period of time, to actually trust the process, go with it and take a step back and do it just incrementally, slowly, and build on it. Because it's not going to happen necessarily for everyone overnight or very quickly.
That's very true. So if we see a patient for their first session, we always try and book a much longer session, hour and a half. And obviously, like, there's a physical aspect to like physically doing orthopedic testing to see what is structurally wrong or physically wrong with the patient. But yeah, there's also the psychological aspect, so the biopsychosocial model aspect. And then one of the key components of that is goal setting. So yeah, I actually laugh sometimes. Like, I just explain to people straight, I love exercise. It's not hard for me to do exercise. But some patients genuinely hate exercise, and that's perfectly fine. And then we kind of dig around, like, why does someone hate exercise? And it's all valid reasons. And that's when we have to get a little bit clever with how we trick and motivate a patient into doing some exercise. So then that's where the education again comes in. We can teach patients that just a few micro stretches, like working on certain movement patterns, opening up your chest is exercise on paper, but it's not exercise to someone who hates exercise.
Yeah.
So yeah, goal setting is a big one. Obviously, I see a few athletes who obviously have London Marathon coming up, etc. So then we obviously have to adapt our treatment plans accordingly. But it is very individualistic. And I think that's just something that not many people think about. Like, we'll go see a professional, and often they'll just start you with the exact same treatment plan, like twice a week, 6 weeks, And I think the public education is find someone who you trust and tailors a treatment plan around you specifically for your personal needs. That's very important. There is no one fix all.
Yeah, and obviously it comes down to, like you said earlier about the goal setting and their personal reason for wanting to do something. And, someone who's a very high performer, likes everything very quickly, just wants to get on and is very motivated, is going to have a different goal to someone who, just wants to feel better, be pain-free and just get a little bit healthy. They don't have a big, goal of, being the strongest 50-year-old or fighting in the next MMA or something. Is going to be a very different mindset. So that goal setting and understanding that person's reason behind it is going to be really important. But on that point you're saying about marathons, because we do have the marathon coming up and there'll be a lot of people wanting to take part in that, and they may be struggling with a knee, back, hip, ankle problem, whatever it is. And your example I mentioned earlier about getting you 8 weeks, which is phenomenal, or running a marathon from a standing start. Take us through how someone who is thinking, okay, I've suddenly been accepted to take part in this marathon. How would you get someone who is struggling a bit with pain, but they want to be able to complete them? I'm not talking about necessarily completing it with a personal best. I know you did, but just getting through it pain-free and having that achievement, that goal of, I'm a little bit older, I've got a back problem or my knee's bothering me, but I really want to run this marathon, do it for a charity. What would be your advice? What would you say to someone who was going through that particular challenge at the moment?
Yeah, so there's a few good questions there. Please stop me or pause me if I go a bit longer with the answer. So before you flatter me anymore, the 8 week to the marathon, I had a good baseline fitness, first of all. Okay, so yes, we can speak about the New York Marathon where I did break the sub-3, luckily. But even more recently, literally the end of January this year, when I went to South Africa just before we spoke, my brother invited me to do a marathon with him, and he gave me a 2 week notice period to do a marathon with him. Now, without even thinking about it, I just said yes. Now, obviously, that sounds crazy. I don't recommend this to anyone unless you are someone who is a regular exerciser. But this also touches on to my health philosophy, like be ready for anything in life. Like, be ready to run a 5K or a 10K if you had to for an emergency. Be able to lift up the heavy grocery bags. Be able to go through some mental and physical stress every now and then. So training for all of these aspects in life just gets you ready for like anything. So to touch on, you asked about how to prepare for a marathon. So I think we're about 10 weeks to go to the London Marathon.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is probably like the earliest time that you would take it up. You know, if you get an entry now, maybe defer it to like next year and actually enjoy the entire process. If someone has got niggles and they're starting to train for the marathon, this was about like a month ago, let's say that they had a 14 or a 16 week plan and they had a few niggles, there's always cross training to be done. So you could get into a bike or a stepper, get into the pool, you could run in water. There are multiple other ways that you could get fit without the sort of running strain. And yes, it's so common. I've got a lot of marathon runners at the moment who got the lucky entries or who are doing it for charity, and they've all got multiple backgrounds. You know, some are strength athletes, some are couch potatoes, some people are good cyclists. And when you start running, same with when you see patients who are new to like treatment, often you feel amazing and you get fit relative to yourself really quickly. So the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, you feel amazing. And then that plateau comes and the fatigue starts kicking in and muscles and tendons just aren't used to that repetitive strain. So if you want to get into the sort of deep weeds here in the sort of science of it, is that there's a word heterochronicity where it's different timings. So for instance, if you start running, yes, your muscles might adapt within six weeks roughly, but the cartilage doesn't. You know, your ligaments don't adapt that quickly. Yes, the nerves can learn a new firing pattern 6 to 8 weeks, I believe, but the tendons and the cartilage and the ligaments take a bit longer to actually grow new scar tissue and grow new collagen bands in certain lines. So I think just knowing that, again, back to education, just knowing that your first marathon, if you're new to running, enjoy the process, take it super slow and enjoy the first 18 months of just adapting the body to being on your feet. My brother is an orthopedic surgeon. He's one of the cleverest guys I know, and but we are very, very different. And he runs a lot, and he's a really good runner. Naturally, he's like just a phenomenal runner. And I don't run a lot anymore. I train for life. I quote unquote cross train, and we did this marathon purely out of enjoyment to do it together. And yeah, it was just an interesting observation that the last 10 kilometers, even though he's way more running fit than what I am, I was probably the fresher of the two of us in the last 10Ks. So just an interesting observation. My brother went super slow with me for the first bit. So if I let him go, he would have probably beaten me by half an hour. But because we were together and we were on our feet for 3.5 hours in the end, towards the end, that's when all the cross training and the extra exercise that you do, the strength training, the endurance, the balance, the flexibility, those muscle systems kick in after you've been on your feet for about 30 Ks. So to round this off, if you're asking for advice for the marathon runners at the moment, don't neglect your strength training, don't neglect your feet and your balance training, don't neglect your flexibility. That's what's going to carry you through for the last 10 or 12 kilometers of your upcoming marathon.
Yeah, and recovery also is important, because if you want to continue doing this, because a lot of people seem to forget or put to one side, maybe time constraints, whatever, I don't have time for too much recovery, but it's actually the whole, being fit, being healthy, being able to take part in any sport. Recovery is all part of this program, particularly as we're getting older.
So recovery is directly proportional to your fitness. Recovery is directly proportional to your health. So yes, 100% agree with that. And I've had to learn that many times the hard way. I've had most musculoskeletal conditions that I treat, I've experienced myself. And looking back, if we had to break down each injury that I've gotten, it's been a lack of recovery. Relative to the overuse, and there's obviously lots of multiple factors, but yes, once I started taking my recovery seriously, my health skyrocketed.
Yeah. It does make, because your body just needs that time to repair, and it gets stronger by just taking that time out. And I think the older you get, it's better to do less but better quality, and add in, particularly if you're struggling with time, add in an extra time for recovery, whether that's flexibility work, active rest, soft tissue work, whatever it may be that you need, and bringing that in if you want to be truly healthy, as well as the psychological aspects of it as well. It helps with that as well, just focusing the mind and getting you in a good place psychologically as well.
100%. And it's an observation. It's probably not proven yet, but this is just my my sort of theory at the moment, is that there isn't anything new under the sun. I think humans have always known that 1 out of 7 days should be a rest day. Like there should be specific resting periods in our lives, and I think the science backs it up. If you're trying to learn a habit, I think it's James Clear speaks about the 85% rule. 15% of that is also the recovery side, and that's 1 out of 7. 1 out of 7 days is 14%. So it is interesting. I think in like my experience with patients, it's directly proportional. So the quality of your recovery is directly proportional to the quality of your healing. Very, very important. And again, if you have time, we can touch on all of these little golden nuggets as to how people can recover.
Yeah, we do want to get some golden nuggets. They're really important.
I have the whole afternoon for you, so we can go back to those later if you want.
Yeah, because I want to also get into, I want to talk about your 7 strategies as well. But in terms of, your MoveMed, what would you suggest, or what is your, and maybe this is part of your 7 strategies as well, for actually, getting more movement? Where would you start? Where would you intend to end? And if you're thinking of someone who's listening today who thinks, I need to get more movement, I need to be more flexible, I need to be able to start at that point. What are your strategies for getting them into peak condition at any age, really?
Great question. In terms of just running and just marathon, then I would actually tell people to actually go read chapter 2 of the book, and those are sort of like the sort of 7 principles for I think fitness specifically. But to even further simplify it, we could break it down into 5 principles for longevity and 4 principles in terms of movement. So if you want, I can go through all of those now. So
yeah, definitely.
If someone wants to move into the future and move into your older age, it's essential that you find some kind of consistent movements that you can do pain-free. So the 4 pillars of movement, if you want to super simplify it, would be endurance, being able to go longer distance every now and then. It would be strength, which arguably is probably the most important of the pillars, but strength is essential. Flexibility, being able to move and to avoid inflexibility inequalities. So for instance, like your hip flexors becoming way too tight for your back. So it's inequalities. And then the 4th factor would be balance or proprioception. So those are 4 pillars. So I would say to anyone who starts moving, look at those pillars and start with one of them. And then once you've made a movement habit, you can stack and you can add on the others slowly. Find something that you enjoy, that's preferable, something that you could sustain for a long time. If possible, find an outdoor exercise to get the extra benefits of just sunlight and fresh air.
Even as simple as walking in the fresh air here where I am, you've got a river close by. So, getting out there, which I know is difficult sometimes in a big city, but really, really important.
100%. So those are the 4 pillars, and it's quite self-explanatory. If you're lacking in some of them, work on your weaknesses, but even your strengths, you can almost double down on your strengths. And if you enjoy gym and you're really strong, brilliant, keep doing that and get as strong as you can, but also incorporate the other 3 into your training. The other hand is runners who, for instance, might have all the endurance in the world. They need to be doing strength. They need to get their feet and their balance stronger, and they need to get their flexibility better. And again, like the professional athletes who are winning the Olympics and that, to them, this is all obvious, like they are doing so much behind the scenes, cross training and working on all of these things. But sometimes just how historically we have observed these athletes doing their trade, we might think Mo Farah only runs, No, he's definitely doing the strength training and all the boring stuff behind the scenes. So those are the four pillars that I find helpful for patients. If even that's too daunting, then we can almost break up the sort of movements into the sort of principles of learning something. And that would be incremental learning, So start with even just a movement pattern. So if you're on the couch a lot, a good movement pattern would be to open up your chest, things like just leaning through a doorway. So you could just start with a few movement patterns. Once you've made a few habits of getting a movement pattern going, the quote unquote grease the groove from Pavel's book, you just keep on doing the same movements, and eventually those neurons in your brain, Hibbean principle, they actually start firing together and it becomes a habit. And once you've got one small habit, you can then habit stack and you can add a few things onto that if you want to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of common education that I give to patients to get them started. Hopefully by now they're like saying, okay, Cuan, shut up. I think let me get started. So that's great. In terms of longevity and moving into your older age, you could just always be focusing on the 5 principles of longevity. And that is the acronym LENS, LENDS. So I'll just go through them straight if you want.
Sure.
L stands for love. And that's such a deep one that you often don't hear of love from your doctor, your chiropractor, or your physical therapist. But yeah, love is a very important one. Love comes in many forms. You could think of love as your social interactions with your friends, obviously your partners or spouses. That's like your obviously like specific family love. Love incorporates a reason to get better, which is very important. If someone has a reason to get better, they most likely will, statistically. Love incorporates the whole doctor-patient relationship, like it's just love and passion, and like, do you want to really get that person better? Once they trust you, you can get into a doctor-patient relationship that you can work towards something together. So love is very important. See where in your life you could work on the love relationships in your life. That will add years to your spine and your life, I believe. Mm-hmm. So that's L. E is exercise. So we've already touched on the 4 pillars of exercise. N is an interesting one. That stands for newness. So new things. That's very important in terms of getting older. If you're constantly learning something new, your brain will degenerate at a slower rate. I think that's quite accepted these days. So newness means new trauma. So if you're young and you're exercising, you have to be pushing the boundaries. You're actually hurting the body, but provided you're recovering properly, the body will heal better than before. So new trauma, new environments, if you have the luxury of traveling and doing cool experiences, that will add years to your life. Just new environments is very, very, very important. And even in the clinical aspect, if a patient got injured or hurt their back because of their posture, for instance, we need to change the environment that they are moving and living in. So we can change their screen height, we could change the smell in the room, we could change the light in the room. So it's new environments are very important for longevity. D stands for diet and supplementation. And again, I'm not an expert on nutrition, but very, very, very important. There's a few supplements that I recommend to most patients. I kind of just tell them what I take myself that are known to just increase and speed up the healing process in the human body. So that's supplementation. And then obviously diet. Avoid the things that are causing excess inflammation. They'll go a long way for you, Yeah. And then S means sleep. So sleep, I think, encompasses the ultimate form of recovery. So sleep means recovery. So just we did mention earlier about focusing on a recovery-driven lifestyle and doing things to get your best and your most quality sleep is very important.
And how do all these things actually affect the soft tissues and the joints? Which I know we all know sleep. I mean, I've suffered with sleep deprivation for years, and for me, it's that's the number one thing, even before all the others. And you go on about love as well, but it's also about loving yourself enough to value yourself to do all these things for you, putting yourself first a little bit. But in terms of all these things, in what sense have you noticed from the science and obviously from your vast experience, each of those, the impact it has on your joints, on the inflammation, on the soft tissues?
Yeah, so I'd probably say that you incorporate those principles into the sort of neural education framework, where if you think of removing something, so taking away, if you're eating certain foods that are known to inflame your body, you probably won't ever get fully better in terms of the actual muscle tissue itself or the tendon tissue, because if you're constantly inflaming it, that might be the ongoing trigger for you. So the LENDS principles apply to each of those steps, maybe it's a lack of motivation or lack of love that might be a psychological trigger for your painful syndrome. So yeah, I think we just try and address all of those different facets for a patient. If it ends up that the end game is just that the patient's got better quality sleep, that will directly affect healing rates. So all of those 5 sort of pillars of longevity intertwine with each other to kind of just help the patient be the best version of themselves. And again, from a statistical point of view, we're just increasing the chance of tissue healing. One of the educational tools in the book I'm sure you've seen is the health seesaw. Such a simple thing, if your seesaw is tilting in a way that's making you worse, you will never get better. If your seesaw tilts in the favor of recovery and healing, you will get better, slowly, but you will get better just by tilting your health seesaw in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. But first of all, you've kind of got to figure out where it is you're lacking as well. Like you say, you need to take out certain things that are maybe negatively impacting you and inject more of the positive stuff. And I always sort of believe that health and fitness, strength, all these sorts of things, it's not just about the physical body, it's the other things it can affect. And that includes, your ability to create the life you want, the wealth you want, the relationships you build, how you show up in the world, your confidence, which I know as we're getting a little bit older, you can start, with men and women alike, can start have a confidence crisis, if you like, identity crisis, where their life's going, if they really achieved everything. Thinking I have lack of time, now I'm getting older, and sort of visualizing the future for themselves, aging. So it's more than just about the physical body. It goes beyond that. And I think for me, if you take like a pie chart, if you like, a cycle of life, and you divide it up into different sections. So one can be your health and fitness, another one could be your spirituality, maybe career, money, family, relationships. And then put a mark 1 to 10, for instance, of where you feel it is, 1 being the lesser, 10 being obviously greater. And then that kind of gives you a visual about, okay, where do I need to then start injecting a little bit more of these things into my life? Or maybe less focus maybe on career or money, and maybe more focus on family or spirituality. And that kind of, in my mind, de-stresses you a little bit. And that lack of stress reduces inflammation as a whole. And therefore the muscles are going to be relaxed, the body's going to be relaxed. And it's kind of also impacts your ability to move. Or am I just completely going way out there with that theory?
I think you're spot on, Julia. Yeah. So you mentioned there about the stress and inflammation. Obviously you want to get something done, you give it to a busy person, So stress is good for us. It obviously keeps our immune system good to a point. We've all experienced when we go on holiday that you get sick, and that's because you finally get to the holiday and you've jammed everyone in, that you've tried to do all your tasks the week of your holiday. Your stress was at a high, therefore your immune system was at a high too, and then it straight away drops and the underlying flu comes out, or the head cold, or the man flu. So yes, you're spot on. And life's just a journey, I suppose. You'll have periods when you have to try and increase your stress levels, perhaps when you're in like the UK winter and it's quite low motivating, etc. You might need to do a few techniques to try and increase your stress levels. But then when you're in the grind of the day-to-day grind, you need to do some things to slow down your stress levels or lower your stress levels. And it's this constant yin and yang and waxing and waning through life, where you just need to try and find a system of learning and listening to your own body and to see what you need. I've learned this a lot. My wife is an extrovert internally. I think she gets energy from people. Mm-hmm. And I'm an introvert, although I come across as an extrovert, quote unquote. But after being around people, I need a break. So yeah, very, very often I will say no to some things, like some social events, I'll just say no. And my wife might be like, well, you're boring, and I'm like, well, I just know that I'm on the verge of probably a burnout or a flu or a sickness or an injury, and I need a break. So it's taken me many years to learn that. I think when you're young, you can just do everything that you want. But now, as we're getting older, you have to be smart and you have to just find out what triggers you and what helps you heal personally, and just find that fine balance.
Yeah, I think the wisdom of age, listening to the body, listening to yourself, and I mean, how much apart as well when it comes to sort of pain prevention in particular, would you say it's really important? I know in sport they periodize programming depending on what season the sport they're playing, which obviously doesn't apply to someone who is no longer a professional athlete or just enjoys sport at an amateur level or just for recreation. But even that aside, how important is actually periodizing your programs as you want to overcome pain?
Yeah, it's essential. It's essential. So I think one of the
first
first
of all, I
things
guess we should explain a little bit about what periodizing your program is.
Yeah, very good. So from a sport point of view, periodizing is where you're going through periods of perhaps more red zone efforts or more exercise that might be hurting your body in a good way. And then you have to have periods of recovery where you're going a lot less. So there's a common one is the zone 2, zone 2, zone 2. So zone 2 is the training zone theoretically where you aren't necessarily getting injured. You're just building up your cardiovascular base, etc. But you won't become the fastest athlete just doing zone 2. You have to also do the red zone training efforts. So to my understanding, that's the most simple explanation of periodization, is that you have to have structured period of pushing and structured period of recovery. And the same thing happens with healthcare. If we see a patient and one of their triggers is their work-related posture, if we don't change that, they'll never get better. So their posture could be something that is just repetitively triggering their back pain or repetitively triggering their headaches. So they are like if you want to think of it as they're in that red zone all the time, they're just never periodizing anything. So we incorporate micro breaks into that patient's day. We might teach them how to do that opening doorway stretch as an example, just to try and break the amount of hours that they're at their screen. So that's a form of periodization. We're just introducing these little periods of strict recovery. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, because I mean, all this is impacting as we come into sort of movement, doesn't it? It's prolonging that movement, forever, if possible, for as long as the rest of your life, whatever that may be. So having this approach to your exercise, your recovery, your prehab, rehab is going to help you first increase your movement, decrease that inflammation, but it's also going to keep it there, I can see, for the long term as well. And it's just having that willpower, that control, and that to go through that process.
One of my good friends, Nick Bester, is a running coach. He owns Best Athletics Running Club in London. I mean, the guy's flying. He's done a 2:19 marathon. So he's a next level athlete. And when we started working together, it was 2020. He actually wrote a piece for my book. He was going on raw talent when I met him. He was still going under sort of 229, 230 when I met him. And I definitely didn't teach him anything. I'm not claiming that I did, but chats about recovery and perhaps incorporating that into his training. Him and I cycled next to him while he broke his personal best marathon time. He ran a 2:28 in Battersea Park in the rain, just by incorporating a few different techniques. Very, very important. What I suppose is helping you and me and health educators is that it's quite popular these days to be healthy. I think back in the day, 10 years, 20 years ago, it was popular to have a drink. It was popular to post your party nights. And I think now it's a lot more acceptable. People are posting their healthy food. They're posting about not drinking alcohol, and it's accepted and it's normal and it's popular. So it's great, but I don't think it's also, I don't think everyone's doing it. There's still a lot of people who aren't exercising, and I think that those are the people that we're also trying to reach. Because there's lots of people doing some really good and healthy things at the moment. Some of them are extreme. We can speak about those later if you want. But I think there's a good awareness of health, which is great. Like people are talking about health, which is great.
Yeah. So I know lots of people be desperate to find out your tips for moving better. So do you want to take us through what your top tips are now for someone if they come, I really need to.
In terms of a patient who comes to see
What are
you
Dr.
with
Wayne's
back pain?
top tips?
Sorry?
Sure, because back pain is very, very common, very, very common.
Yeah. Top tips. Wow. I think we covered some of them earlier, where number one would be see where in your life you are hurting yourself or overdoing something. See how you can modify that stressor in your life. So if it is a repetitive posture, see how you can change it. So I think being aware is the first step of trying to just be aware of what is making you ill in the first place.
And actually,
Hand
let's
in
touch
hand,
on that before we move on.
with that goes, what are you lacking? What are you not doing? It might be some kind of supplement that you're not taking, or a food group that you're not focusing on. So I think try and work out for yourself what is causing the underlying dysfunction. And then I think the advice is just start somewhere. If you aren't an exerciser or someone who enjoys movement, try a few things and see how they feel. I recommend Pilates to patients and yoga, like things that you can just find on YouTube, find an instructor whose voice you like or whose looks you like, and try some of their routines. Until you try it, you don't know if you'll enjoy it. And one of my sayings is that you have to sometimes fake it until you wake it. Sometimes you just don't know. Like you might try one Pilates class and the next day you can't walk down the stairs because your quads are so stiff.
Yeah.
And you might find that addictive. And you just don't know until like sometimes you don't know that you don't know. That's a very important, not even health principle, just life principle. Sometimes you don't know that you don't know. So I think sometimes try, make a start, and if you hate it, tick it off. Then you've tried that, and try something else, and keep on trying until you find one or two things that you feel you could do for the rest of your life. And start there.
And for those who are super active, these sort of executives, high performing entrepreneurs who are kind of very motivated, and many of them do take part in some sport on an amateur level just for fun. It's really part of that competitive mindset. In terms of them of being able to perform even at a higher peak, what would you say for them? A few little tidbits that, if they really want to take it to the next level in terms of their movement and their ability to create more strength, more power, and prevent any pain, any problems that could eventually hold them back?
Yeah, very, very good question. So for the elite people, I would say put your oxygen mask on first. Try and be the best version of yourself, and your teams will then follow suit. So if you're a high functioning executive who's not exercising, start. And I think we've just mentioned how to make a start. If you're already exercising, see which of the 4 movement pillars you could work on or where you might be lacking. And just keep moving forward.
It is all in this amazing book here. So I do suggest you get it, because it's so much detail in here, and it even has your periodized program for your marathon running.
Yes, there is a program in there.
A program, but it's a starter. It's a framework.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words, Julia. The book was a lockdown finishing project. I had this draft of a few stories and just ideas that I've just kept throughout the 10 years of practice before I wrote the book. And lockdown hit, and I was like, wow, I don't have a job or a life anymore.
I think a lot of people have that issue.
Yeah, and from day one of lockdown, I found 2 editors and we had some fun.
Yeah, but I think that was the thing with lockdown as well. It was suddenly everyone was obviously having to do something, but it kind of, in a way, being in that, when we're all fearful for our health, we actually became maybe more healthy, many of us. Certainly it didn't stop me exercising, but it wouldn't. I've been training in the gym for 30 plus years. But that's what I saw, a sort of increase in interest in getting fitter, getting healthier, which was kind of, I guess, a positive outcome of that. But it's kind of making sure people maintain that movement. And as I said, as we're getting older, being able to do that even more, get stronger, and keep the muscles really strong and healthy and better quality is going to really, really help you. And incorporating all those extra bits like your nutrition, making sure you have a good sleep environment, make sure you sleep well, and loving yourself and valuing yourself enough to do that for yourself, and maybe saying no to a few things if you feel this is going to be really important, because you can't give to anyone else until you've sorted yourself out first, I would say.
Yeah, it's very true. And COVID was just the strangest time ever. I think it just forced everyone to reassess where they were in life, because it was just such a shock to everyone's system. Like obviously, yeah, I mean, like in the UK there was lockdowns, and yeah, we weren't able to leave our house for so many, like 1 hour a day. So it really put you in the boiling pot in a way. So I think everyone had to think about where they were in life and what the trajectory of their life was to some degree. And yeah, some people thrived in the sort of lockdown period and that kind of stress, and used that to kind of catapult themselves going forward. And yeah, for some people it was a harsh time, like obviously besides the actual like illness side of it, I think it really brought up some underlying issues. A lot of mental health issues like crept out from the woodwork. It was just a strange time.
I'm glad it's over.
I don't like admitting it, but I mean, I was just on my own. I was forced to be alone. I was only in the UK. It was my first year here on a work visa. And to be fair, I thoroughly enjoyed parts of it, where like I wrote a book, and I've never had that much time off. And I don't think I ever will have that much time off again. So, but I don't like admitting that, because I know it was such a horrible time. Some people really did, lose lives and lose just lifestyle.
Yeah, but I do think you touched on it there, which is a really important part. No matter who you are, how old you are, or your health and fitness, capacity at this point, one of the first things to do is really sit. If you are thinking, I need to do something for myself, I need to be pain-free, I need to be more active, really start by reevaluating and assessing what it is you need, what it is you want to achieve, the reasons you want to do it. And that will kind of be the foundation for what you need to do moving forward that's best for you. But definitely getting more flexibility, getting more strength in whatever way works for you, and like I say, make sure you enjoy it. And then I would always say as well, do get some professional advice from someone like yourself, or me even, or your doctor, or whoever you feel comfortable with. And just start. Don't get overwhelmed. Even if you're a seasoned fitness enthusiast, don't get overwhelmed by anything. We all go through these transitions in life, and as you get older, it's another transition, but it doesn't mean it's the end. There are so many things that you have proven can be done to actually get you moving better and recovering and preventing that pain, and just having a better quality of life, no matter what your age is.
100%. And I think for the viewers listening, I think make a start and expect the wheel to fall off sometimes.
It's okay.
You have to go through the sewage to get to the clear water. And even when we treat patients, like all that we look for is a few windows of relief, like a few small windows where, wow, I feel like I can maybe move better, or there's less pain. That's all we look for, because once you do move better, or you are moving, you're going to activate movements and muscles that you never knew you had. And the brain's going to almost sometimes go into like, protection mode. And then you're going to probably experiencing more pain for a while. Yeah. So expect to go through the sewage before the clear water, and you just keep chipping away, keep moving forward, and normally there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
100%. Look, Dr. Wayne, if people want to get in touch with you and find out more about what you do, where can they find you? Where's the best place to access your information and get in touch with you?
Yeah, Julia, thank you. All my social medias are at MoveMed UK. So the word MoveMed UK. My website's movemed.co.uk.
Brilliant. Well, look, Dr. Wayne, it's been great having you on and having this discussion. Hopefully many more people are inspired to move better and start taking those strategies that you talked about, those principles you talked about, and implementing them from today. And it's going to make a big difference moving forward, I'm sure. But I really want to thank you for joining me. You're an inspiration and a very knowledgeable person. I think everyone can learn from you. And I want to thank everybody else for joining us today. And hopefully we'll have another chat in the future again. But for now, I'd like to thank everyone and Dr. Wayne for joining me today on Unleash Your Inner Athlete. Goodbye.
Thank you for your time.